Hello children, how are you all? Today we are going to study chapter 2 of history, New Kings and Kingdoms. In this we will learn about many new dynasties which emerged after the 7th century. Here is a map showing the major ruling dynasties in different parts of the subcontinent between the 7th and 12th centuries. The next topic is the emergence of new dynasties. By the 7th century, there were big landlords or warrior chiefs in different regions of the subcontinent. Existing kings often acknowledged them as their subordinates or samantas. They were expected to bring gifts for their kings or overlords, be present at their courts, and provide them with military support. As samantas gained power and wealth, they declared themselves to be Mahasamanta, Mahamandaleshwara, the great lord of the circle or region, and so on. Sometimes they asserted their independence from their overlords. One such instance was that of the Rashtrakutas in the Deccan. Initially, they were subordinate to the Chalukyas of Karnataka. In the mid-8th century, Dantidurga, a Rashtrakuta chief, overthrew his Chalukya overlord and performed a ritual called Hirayana Garbha, literally the golden boom. When this ritual was performed with the help of Brahmanas, it was thought to lead to the rebirth of the sacrificer as a Kshatriya, even if he was not one by birth. Next is administration in the kingdom. Many of these new kings adopted high sounding titles such as Maharaja Adhiraja, Great King, Overlord of Kings, Tribhuvana Chakravartin, Lord of the Three Worlds, and so on. However, in spite of such claims, they often shared power with their samantas as well as with association of peasants, traders, and brahmanas. In each of these states, resources were obtained from the producers, that is, peasants, cattle keepers, artisans, who were often persuaded or compelled to surrender part of what they produced. Sometimes they were claimed as rent due to a lord who asserted that he owned the land. Revenue was also collected from traders. Next is the Prashastris and land grants. Prashastris contain details that may not be literally true, but they tell us how rulers wanted to depict themselves as valiant, victorious workers. For example, these were composed by learned Brahmanas who occasionally helped in the administration. The achievements of Nagabhatta. Many rulers describe their achievements in Prashastis. One Prashasti written in Sanskrit and found in Gwalior, Madhya Pradesh, described the exploits of Nagabhatta, a Pratihara king. Then kings often rewarded Brahmins by grants of land. These were recorded on copper plates which were given to those who received the land. See, the picture of copper plate is given below. Next was the warfare for wealth. As we will see, the rulers who tried to demonstrate their power and resources by building large temples. So when they attacked one another's kingdom, they often chose to target temples which were sometimes extremely rich. One of the best known of such rulers is Sultan Mahmud of Ghazni, Afghanistan. He ruled from 997 to 1030 and extended control over parts of Central Asia. Much of the wealth Muhammad carried away was used to create a splendid capital city at Ghazni. He was interested in finding out more about the people he conquered and entrusted a scholar named Al-Barani to write an account of the subcontinent. This Arabic work, known as the Kitab al-Hind, remains an important source for historians. He consulted Sanskrit scholars to prepare this account. Other kings who engaged in warfare include the Chahamanas, later known as the Chalukyas, who ruled over the region around Delhi and Ajmer. Then the next topic is a closer look, the Cholas. From Uraiyur to Thanjavur. How did the Cholas rise to power? A minor chiefly family known as the Mutteriyar held power in the Kaveri Delta. They were subordinate to the Pallava kings of Kanchipuram, Vijayala, who belonged to the ancient chiefly family of the Cholas from Uraiyur, captured the delta from the Mutteriyar. In the middle of the 9th century, he built the town of Thanjavur and a temple for goddesses Nishumbalashtundind there. Now the splendid temples and bronze sculpture were the main works of the Cholas. The big temples of Thanjavur and Gangaikonda, Cholapuram, built by Rajaraja and Rajendra, are architectural and sculptural marvels. Chola temples often became the nuclei of settlements which grew around them. These were centers of craft production. Temples were also endowed with land by rulers as well as by others. Next is agriculture and irrigation. Many of the achievements of the Cholas were made possible through new developments in agriculture. Now, notice that the river Kaveri branches off into several small channels before emptying into the Bay of Bengal. These channels overflow frequently, depositing fertile soil on their banks. Water from the channels also provides the necessary moisture for agriculture, particularly the cultivation of rice. Next is administration of the empire. Settlement of peasants known as became prosperous with the spread of irrigation agriculture. Groups of such villages formed larger units called Nadu. The village council and the Nadu had several administrative functions including dispensing justice and collecting taxes. Rich peasants of the Velala caste exercised considerable control over the affairs of the Nadu under the supervision of the central Chola government. The Chola kings gave some rich landowners titles like Movendaran, a Velan or peasant serving 3 kings, Araya, chief, etc., as marks of respect and entrusted them with important offices of the state of the center.